A friend of mine, Dain Dunston, is one of the authors of a book called Nanovation, and it's a fascinating book on disruptive innovation. The book is called Nanovation. It's fantastic. Please welcome the author and a great speaker, Mr. Dain Dunston.
Billy, thank you so much. Well, thank you. I'm Dain Dunston, and I'm one of the authors of a book called Nanovation, which is a 3-year case study into a group of engineers in India who set out to do something completely impossible. They set out to build a car that would sell for the price of a motor scooter. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, in India, this is a pretty common sight, a whole family up on a scooter. And I think we would look at this and say, are you nuts? Why would you do this? But they're not nuts, they're just unstoppable. You know, India is the most optimistic country on earth right now. They're the world's biggest democracy. They speak English. They're really intelligent. They're well educated. And they can't wait to join us in making a difference in the world. So if it takes riding everybody on a scooter to get those 2 girls to school and to get mom and dad to work, that's what they're going to do. So, okay, why don't they take the train? Here's why. Public transportation is a little crazy in India. So these engineers set out to see if they could find a way to solve this problem. And what they set out to do was see if they could take 50 to 70% out of all the costs of every part in a car. Now think about that. Car is pretty mature technology. All the costs that have been taken out, or that could be taken out, have been taken out. But they did it, and the result is the Nano. A real car can survive on Indian roads, seats 5 people. Now the result is that the competition had to fold. Suzuki owned that end of the market. They had 50% market share. They had a little car called the Maruti that sold for $5,000. They mocked this whole thing, and then suddenly they come out with a car that sells for $2,100. They said, we don't know how to do that. They packed it in, left the market. The other thing that happened is, as part of this project, some of the world's biggest OEM parts manufacturers were part of it. So people like Visteon and Delco and Bosch, they got into it, they got excited about it, they learned how to take costs out of their parts. So as a result, you go down to the Volkswagen dealer today and you buy a new Volkswagen Passat, you're going to pay $7,100 less than last year's model. Next generation Range Rover, one of the most expensive SUVs in the world, the next generation will weigh 1,100 pounds less than the current one. So think about that. That's a 20% reduction in the weight of the car. It's going to be more fun to drive and more fun to fill up at the pump. The other thing is that these engineers are Tata Motors, which is a company in India who in 2008 bought Jaguar Land Rover from Ford out of bankruptcy, turned the company around, made them profitable last year, and now they're selling some of the greatest cars in the world all over the place. So these are guys from whom you can learn a few things. And one of the things we learned is that there's a whole new wave of innovation that we call nanovation. And the other thing we learned is that in the 21st century, with the way technology and business is going, businesses now have 2 choices. You either innovate or perish. So let's dig a little deeper into that. I like the way Thomas Friedman says it. In today's world, whatever can be done will be done. The only question is, will it be done by you or to you? Right now, you have competitors out there who are doing everything they can think of to use innovation to radically disrupt your industry. What happens if they succeed? What happens if you're the ones who do that? And if it's going to be you, where would you start? Well, one of the things we recommend is that you start at the convergence of trends. There are some monster trends out there today, and they're really, really important to get ahead of. But here's the problem. As human beings, we're not that good at seeing trends while they're happening. We're really good at looking in the rearview mirror and seeing a trend that just happened and analyzing it and seeing what's happened over the last few years. We're not so good at looking at a trend as it's happening. Why is that? Well, we've got Bill here, so let's look at why magic works. What a magician does is gets our attention focused on something that he's doing, asks us to concentrate on it, and while he's doing that, he can do all sorts of things and we don't see them. They're not invisible, they're not even hidden. We just don't see them. Great example. How many of you have seen the video that's on YouTube of the two basketball teams, right? And you're supposed to count how many times the white team passes the ball? How many have seen that? Really, that few? I wish we'd shown it. So what happens while you're counting the 13 times the white team passes the ball and you're so proud that you got it right? What happens? Those of you who've seen it, what happens? Somebody in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the frame, pounds his chest, and walks out again. And you never saw it. So let me ask you, you come into your store in the morning, you sit down in your chair, you concentrate on the things you know to be the most important things to work on and to look at. Who's walking through your store in a gorilla suit and you don't even see it? So, one of the things that you may be missing is the accelerating pace of change. Change is happening really fast. We all know that. There's new things coming all the time. But what we don't see, because we're human beings, we're geared to experience life linear, right? Sunrise, sunset, every day, one day at a time. So we don't see that the rate is accelerating. It just all looks linear to us. But if you look at the way change has happened over not just our lifetimes, but over all of history, we had centuries where nothing much happened. You know, it would take thousands of years for one thing to happen, and then the next paradigm shift to happen, and then the next one. But now, we've come into a point just in the last century where it's going vertical. Case in point, when we get to the top now, where we are now, we're having a paradigm shift about every decade, every 7 to 10 years. That means that the rate of change is actually doubling every decade. So what happens if you start to plan based on what you thought happened in the last 5 years? You're going to be off. So let's talk about your business. If you read in the press, you know, people say, well, there's nothing happening in batteries. Battery is flat. You know, there's no innovation coming there. And that's not true. Battery capacity growth has been growing pretty consistently at 6% a year. And so that means it's going to double every decade, every 12 years or so. And that's not bad. And we've seen a lot more things in the last few years that can run on batteries. But there's so much research going on in batteries that we're likely to have a paradigm shift pretty quickly. I mean, the two biggest areas in research right now are batteries and obesity. And I know we can do something about batteries. So I think that probably 5 to 7 years, we're going to have a massive paradigm shift in batteries. And stuff that can run on batteries is just going to blow your mind. So cars will go from being able to run, 100 miles on battery to 300, 400, 500 miles on battery. So what does that mean to your business? What if you could take batteries and do something more with them? Well, you all know what Moore's Law is. Anybody know what Moore's Law is? Moore's Law is a term in computing that says the number of transistors you can put on a chip doubles every 18 months. And that's held true since 1965. Now here comes Kuhme's Law. This is brand new. Kuhme's Law says the amount of electricity needed to drive that chip is cut in half every 18 months. So more things can run, more computing power running on less energy. So what does that mean?